Have you ever been in group conversations and had those awkward moments of silences? Or worse, awkward silence in a one-on-one conversation? Then you need to watch this video until the end so you can find out how you can fill those gaps and keep the conversation flowing. If you're an introvert, you definitely need to watch this video until the end. If you're new here, then hi. My name's Ash. I'm a mindset and confidence coach. If you're interested in personal development, building up your confidence and your communication skills, then hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on the videos I put out each and every week. Alright, so today we'll talk about how you can keep the conversation flowing and talk to anyone with ease, even if you're an introvert. However, I just want to baseline something first. For all of this to work, you need to be able to be two things. One, be observant of your surroundings, and two, have the confidence needed to execute on the tips that I'm going to be talking about today. If you haven't got that inner confidence yet, then I'd recommend you watch my last video about how you can develop that inner confidence, and I'll link it up here or in the description below, so you can check that out first before watching this one. And if you watch until the end, I've got a very exciting opportunity for you as well. Right, now that we've got that cleared, let's dive straight in. The technique I want to teach you is called various names, but the one I like is the Ford method. If you revolve around these four things and use it well, then you will never run out of things to say and you can keep the conversation flowing smoothly. Okay, the first one is family. Most people are relatively comfortable talking about their family because we've all got that in common. You know, we all know that family can be really annoying, but ultimately we all love them anyway. So that's something you can already have in common to talk about. But here's an example of how you can potentially use it. It'd be good to start with a story that you can tell about your sibling, for example. However, if you're not very comfortable telling stories, then you could potentially lead into this conversation by using your surroundings to your advantage. You can say, oh, hey, do you see that person over there? The way they're full of energy reminds me of my older brother. Older siblings can be like that, can't they? By the way, I have a younger sister, so if she's watching, you see what I did there? Anyway, so this can lead you into a good conversation about sibling behavior. If the other person does not have siblings, then that's another great thing because that's a new conversation topic you can go into as well. But this way, family can be a really good conversation starter because everybody has that in common, whether it be the grandparents, parents, siblings, cousins, etc. So use that to your advantage. The next thing to talk about is occupation. Occupation like universities or workplaces. You know, increasingly we are spending more and more time in these kinds of places. So that's a subject area that we're very comfortable talking about. So it's a very safe bet to bring that up as a conversation point. However, it's also a very boring point. So in order for you to make this conversation flow, it needs to be interesting. So you need to stay away from that surface level chat and dive a little bit deeper and make it more interesting. So let's take an example for illustration purposes. Let's say you strike up a conversation saying, oh, hey, what do you do for a living? And that person replies with, I'm a business consultant. I mean, I'm a business consultant, so I'm using this as an example. However, the same thing applies to other jobs as well. So let's say they're a business consultant. So for me, I am met with a few different types of responses when I say I'm a business consultant. Either people ask me, oh, great, what firm do you work at? Or which businesses do you work with? Or a lot of them also ask me, what is a business consultant? So this is surface level chat. You see how this is quite a common thing that everybody does, which is fine. However, if you want to keep the conversation flowing, you want to stay away from surface level chat. And let's be honest, those kinds of questions, do you really care about the answer? Not really. Will you remember them the next day? Probably not. So you really want to dive a little bit deeper than that. Also, a risk you'll fall into if you're sticking towards a surface level chat is making the other person feel like they're in an interview situation. So you want to steer clear from that. So the solution is this is what you really want to do instead. You want to give an opinion of whatever they've said and then ask them with a follow-up question that's actually interesting. So take it back to the business consultant example. If someone tells you they're a business consultant, you can say, oh, wow, cool. You must work with many interesting people. Then you can ask a follow-up question on something like, oh, well, what's the weirdest project you've worked on? Or what's the strange kinds of things do you see with your line of work since you work with many people? See, questions like that make the other person think about the response. And because they are having to think, they also subconsciously will feel that you are a very interesting person to talk to because you're conversing in a far different manner than what other people do. And you're also delving deeper than that surface level showing them that you care about their responses as well. So don't be afraid to give your opinion on the responses they give you when talking about occupation. Now, before we continue on with the other 2 points, let me know, what kind of strange questions have you asked people before, or have you just stuck to surface level chat? All right, the next one is recreation. Now, this one's fairly easy, and I hope you guys are already doing this because this is a super simple topic to get into and very common way to approach this as well. But a simple way to strike up this conversation is to just ask them, hey, outside of work, what are you interested in? What do you do? What tickles your fancy, right? And this is a common mistake that people make. Once they respond to you, normally people just say, okay, cool, and then go into telling their own story about what they're interested in, and therefore negating whatever conversation the other person has started. So at this point, the better thing to do is saying, oh, cool, and then follow up with a more interesting question on how did you get into it, or why are you so passionate about it? Now, this can again spark up the same kind of response as I gave you in the example of the occupation. Now, increasingly nowadays, we spend more and more time watching Netflix or other TV shows rather than spending our time doing hobby type activities. So if this happens to you and you come across somebody who just tells you that their hobby is watching Netflix, that's fine. Ask them what to talk about the last show they binge watched. I'm sure you'll spend hours talking about this, so it's fine. So recreation hopefully is a relatively simple topic to keep conversation flowing around for at least a little while. Now this last one is about dreams. And this is a slightly more advanced level of conversation, so I would highly recommend you I'd highly recommend you do 2 things first. 1, have that level of confidence needed to be able to carry this chat on. And 2, have that rapport already built with the person you're talking to so that this can actually be effective. Otherwise, it can fall a little bit flat. But if you did get into this conversation, here's a couple of lines that you could use to strike up a deep level of conversation around the dreams in the future. One example is to say, when you were a kid, is this how you envisioned your life to turn out to be? Another question is, if money was no object, what would you be spending your time doing? Now, you see how questions like that are already so deep and actually are at a far different level than the other 3 that I spoke about before. This is why I mean you need to have that level of confidence to take this conversation forward and also be having that rapport with the other person so they can really open up and actually tell you the true responses to these questions. Another point to note is you need to gauge the timing for bringing this type of topic up. If the conversation is lighthearted and banterous, don't bring a deep conversation level like this in there. Also, another thing to point out is be ready to answer the same question back, because once they've answered their bit, it's very likely that they'll say, what about you? And if you haven't got an answer ready, it can look a little bit wishy-washy. So just be clear that you might also have to respond. Now we've covered my favorite technique, the Ford method, on how to keep a conversation flowing so you can talk to anyone with ease. However, for all of this to work, you actually need to be attentive during a conversation and not just be thinking about the next thing to say. Normally, when we are afraid of running out of things to say, we make this crucial mistake. The mistake is once you've asked a question and somebody else is actually responding to you, you are now thinking about the next question you need to ask in order to keep the conversation flowing because you're so afraid of that little moment of silence. So you actually fail to catch the little cues the other person is giving to you to respond to the things they're saying and actually keep the conversation flowing, which is what you want to happen in the first place. So to avoid this, when someone's responding to you, actually spend the time to be attentive and actively listen to what they're saying so that you can understand and then reply based on what they're saying instead of the next question you've got ready. So be in the moment and be present and not just in your head. The underlying theme to all of this, however, is level of confidence. You need to have that level of confidence which you can build communication skills on top of. Without confidence, none of this will be able to be effective for you. So if you're interested in building that solid foundation of confidence and being able to improve your communication skills on top of that so that you can continue conversing with anyone with ease and keep the conversation flowing, then go ahead and DM me on my Instagram and we can carry on the conversation there. I have got a mindset challenge opportunity for you to get involved in. This is a coaching program that's 4 weeks and it's designed to do just this. So if you're interested to get involved in that, DM me on my Instagram. And guys, hopefully you have learned some new tricks on how you can keep the conversation flowing. So if you've learned anything, go ahead and click the like button below. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my new videos that I'm putting out next week. And if you want to build that outer appearance of confidence so you can show to people that you are confident, then make sure you watch this video right here so it can teach you to do that. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will catch you in the next one.